The unlikely engineer. Sarah Chen wiped the grease from her hands and squinted at the tangled mess of wires inside the maintenance panel. Repair Bay 47 of Ganymede Station wasn't exactly the glamorous posting most engineers dreamed of, but it suited her just fine. The constant stream of beaten-up ships limping in from the outer colonies kept her busy and, more importantly, kept her mind off Earth's increasingly tense relationship with its own colonies. "Come on, you stubborn piece of junk," she muttered, reaching deeper into the access panel of the battered mining vessel she was supposed to have fixed hours ago. The ship's owner had complained about strange interference in the communication systems, the third such case this week. Something was creating unusual signal patterns across multiple frequencies, but nobody seemed particularly concerned. After all, space was full of weird signals. The diagnostic tool in her hand beeped insistently, drawing her attention to an anomaly in the background radiation. Sarah frowned, adjusting the settings. The pattern wasn't random noise. It had structure, mathematics hidden in its rhythm. Her heart rate quickened as she began recording the signal. A shadow fell across her workspace. Chen. That heap of scrap metal was supposed to be ready this morning. Station Manager Brooks's voice echoed through the repair bay, making her jump and bang her head on the open panel. "Sorry, sir," she said, rubbing her skull. "Found something odd in the comm systems. Look at this pattern." "I don't pay you to chase ghost signals," Brooks interrupted. "Just get it working and move on to the next job. We've got 3 more ships waiting." Sarah bit back a retort. Brooks was like most station management, focused on throughput, not technical mysteries. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this signal was important. As soon as Brooks walked away, she copied the data to her personal tablet. That night, after her shift ended, Sarah sat in her tiny quarters, analyzing the signal pattern. The more she studied it, the more convinced she became that it wasn't natural. The mathematical sequences were too precise, too intentional. But if it was artificial, where was it coming from? And why hadn't any of the major research stations detected it? She was so absorbed in her work that she almost missed the station-wide alert. Almost. The deep, resonating tone made her coffee cup vibrate on her desk. Sarah looked up just as her viewport was filled with light. Dozens of ships appearing from nowhere, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly iridescence. They moved with impossible grace, their formation perfect beyond anything human ships could achieve. "All station personnel, this is not a drill," the PA system crackled. "Unknown vessels have appeared in Sector 7. All civilians are to proceed to designated shelter areas immediately." "This is not." The message cut off abruptly, replaced by a new voice, if you could call it that. It was like listening to crystal wind chimes translated into words, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Humans of Ganymede Station," the voice said, "we are the Valdorian Empire. Your technological development has been monitored. You have accessed frequencies beyond your intended capability. This violation cannot be permitted to continue." Sarah's blood ran cold as she stared at her tablet, still displaying the signal analysis. She had found something, all right. Something that was about to change everything. The station shuddered as docking clamps engaged. Through her viewport, Sarah watched as creatures emerged from the alien ships, tall, crystalline beings that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. They moved with the same precise, perfect grace as their ships, and they were heading straight for the repair bays. Sarah looked around her small quarters, at the tools she'd borrowed over the years, at the half-finished projects scattered across every surface. She wasn't a soldier or a diplomat. She was just an engineer who liked solving puzzles. But right now, she was also probably the only person on the station who understood what the Valdorians were really after. She grabbed her toolkit and tablet, then hesitated before picking up an old, beaten-up manual on practical engineering. The kind that taught you how to fix things with whatever you had on hand. The Valdorians might have perfect technology, but sometimes perfect wasn't what you needed. Sometimes you needed duct tape, determination, and the kind of creativity that could only come from working with broken things. As she slipped out of her quarters and into the maintenance tunnels, she knew better than anyone else on the station. Sarah couldn't help but smile. The Valdorians had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated humanity's greatest strength. Not our technology, but our ability to adapt, to improvise, to find solutions where none should exist. They were about to learn that lesson the hard way. First contact gone wrong. The maintenance tunnels of Ganymede Station were a maze of pipes, conduits, and service passages that most people never saw. To Sarah, they were a second home. She crawled through a narrow duct, her tablet's screen casting a pale blue glow on the metal walls. Above, she could hear the methodical footsteps of the Valdorian patrols. The station's internal sensors showed the crystalline aliens spreading through every level with military precision. They seemed particularly interested in the repair bays and engineering sections. Sarah had a theory about why, but she needed to reach the main computer core to prove it. A sudden vibration through the station's framework made her freeze. The Valdorians were doing something to the station's systems. She could feel the power grid fluctuating in an unnatural pattern. Her diagnostic tool showed energy signatures unlike anything she'd ever seen before. "Come on, what are you looking for?" she whispered, recording the readings. The pattern was similar to the mysterious signal she'd detected earlier, but much stronger. Whatever technology the Valdorians used, it operated on principles that seemed to defy conventional physics. A maintenance hatch ahead of her slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Sarah held her breath, pressing herself against the tunnel wall. A Valdorian emerged. Up close, their crystalline form was even more alien. Its body seemed to shift between solid and liquid states, internal lights pulsing in complex patterns. In its hand was a device that looked like it was made from frozen light. The alien swept the device across the tunnel systems, and Sarah's tablet screen went crazy. Energy readings spiked off the charts. She realized with sudden clarity what she was seeing. The Valdorians weren't just scanning the station's technology, they were rewriting it at a fundamental level. But why? Their technology was clearly far superior. Unless, Sarah's eyes widened as the pieces clicked together. The signal she detected, the Valdorians' interest in human engineering. They weren't here to destroy or conquer. They were here because they were afraid. The alien moved on, and Sarah waited until its footsteps faded before continuing her journey. The computer core was just ahead, but getting there wouldn't be easy. The Valdorians had established a strong presence around all major systems. She reached a junction and carefully removed an access panel, revealing a rat's nest of cables and circuits, modifications she'd made over the years to help her troubleshoot system problems. Now those unofficial upgrades might save the station. Sarah connected her tablet to the network and began writing code. If she was right about the Valdorians, their perfect technology had a critical weakness, one that only an engineer used to working with imperfect human systems would understand. The station's lights flickered as she uploaded her program. On her tablet, she watched as her code spread through the system like a virus. But instead of causing damage, it began collecting data. Every scan the Valdorians made, every modification they attempted, was now being logged and analyzed. A warning klaxon blared, making her jump. The station's artificial gravity wavered, and Sarah had to grab a support beam to steady herself. Through the station's internal sensors, she watched in horror as the Valdorian ships began emitting some kind of energy field that enveloped the entire station. "Emergency protocols engage," the station's AI announced, its voice distorting. "Warning. Unknown technology attempting to override core systems. All personnel evacuate immediately." Sarah ignored the warning, her fingers flying over her tablet. The Valdorians' energy field was trying to transform the station's technology, upgrading it to their impossibly advanced standards. But their perfect systems couldn't account for the thousands of jury-rigged repairs, unofficial modifications, and improvised solutions that kept the station running. Human engineering wasn't pretty, but it was adaptable. Each imperfection in the station's systems was like an antibody, fighting back against the Valdorian modifications. Sarah's code helped coordinate this technological immune response, using the very flaws in human technology as a weapon. Through her tablet, she watched the battle play out in the station's computer core. Valdorian protocols tried to impose perfect order, while human chaos pushed back. It was like watching a war between crystal and clay. And surprisingly, the clay was holding its own. A shadow fell across her tablet. Sarah looked up to find herself face to face with the Valdorian. Its crystalline form towered over her, internal lights pulsing with what she somehow knew was surprise. "You," it said, its chime-like voice resonating in her bones. "You are the one who detected our signal, the one who understands." Sarah stood up slowly, clutching her tablet like a shield. "I understand more than you expected," she said. "Your perfect technology. It's not as stable as you pretend. That's why you're here, isn't it? You're not trying to stop our development. You're trying to prevent us from discovering your weakness." The Valdorian's form rippled, its lights shifting to a pattern she hadn't seen before. Was that anxiety? Fear? "Human technology is crude, inefficient," it said. "But it is resilient in ways we had not anticipated. Your species builds redundancy into everything, creates solutions that should not work, yet do. This chaos, it threatens the very foundations of our civilization." Sarah smiled grimly. "You wanted to perfect our technology before we realized the truth, that sometimes imperfect is better. Well, you're too late. And now the whole station knows what you're really afraid of." The Valdorian raised its device, but Sarah was already moving. She slammed her hand down on a nearby panel, triggering one of her many unofficial system modifications. The lights went out, plunging the tunnel into darkness. In the chaos that followed, Sarah realized that the real battle for Ganymede Station was just beginning. The hidden advantage. Darkness transformed Ganymede Station's maintenance tunnels into a maze of shadows and echoes. Sarah's boots made no sound as she moved through passages she knew by heart, while behind her, the Valdorian's crystalline form cast faint, shifting patterns of light against the walls. "Your primitive evasion tactics are futile." The alien's chime-like voice resonated through the tunnel. "Our sensors can track your biological signature." Sarah ducked into a side passage, grinning despite herself. "Really?" she called back. "Then why haven't you caught me yet?" The answer lay in the dozens of small devices she'd activated during her retreat, jury-rigged sensor scramblers she'd built from spare parts over the years. Originally intended to help her track down system malfunctions, they now filled the tunnels with conflicting signals and false readings. To the Valdorian's perfect sensors, it must have been like trying to find a specific drop of water in a thunderstorm. She reached a junction and pulled up the station schematics on her tablet. The Valdorians had established control centers in all major engineering sections, their crystalline technology spreading through the station's systems like digital ice. But they'd overlooked something crucial: the unofficial network of modifications and improvements made by generations of human engineers. Sarah opened a channel to the station's emergency frequency. "This is Chen to all engineering personnel. If you can hear this, I need your help. Remember all those unofficial fixes we've made over the years, the ones management pretends don't exist. It's time to use them." Responses came in slowly at first, then faster. Engineers, mechanics, and maintenance workers, the people who kept the station running with duct tape and improvisation when the official solutions failed. Each one knew dozens of systems that had been modified, improved, or completely rebuilt outside official specifications. "The recycling system on Level 4 has a bypass we installed last year," one voice reported. "We can use it to flood their control center with coolant. Cargo Bay 7's gravity plating never worked right," another added. "We rigged it with manual controls. We can turn it against them." Sarah coordinated their efforts through her tablet, watching as human ingenuity began to fight back against Valdorian perfection. The aliens' control over the station's systems began to slip as they encountered one jury-rigged solution after another. Their perfect protocols couldn't account for systems that had been modified in ways no sane engineer would attempt. But that worked anyway. A massive tremor shook the station. Through the maintenance tunnel's viewport, Sarah watched as one of the Valdorian ships suddenly lost its perfect formation, its crystalline hull flickering like a faulty light. Her code had found its way into their systems through the very modifications they'd been trying to perfect. Impossible, the pursuing Valdorian's voice echoed through the tunnel. Your technology is crude, inefficient. It cannot interfere with our systems. That's your problem. Sarah called back. You think efficiency is everything. But sometimes the messy solution is the right one. Humans don't build perfect systems. We build systems that can be fixed when they break, that can adapt when they need to. She reached the central engineering hub, where a group of station engineers had barricaded themselves in. They'd turned the entire section into a maze of jerry-rigged defenses, using their intimate knowledge of the station's systems to create chaos for the Valdorians. Their ships are trying to dock on Level 3, reported Maya Wong, the station's head of maintenance. But we got a surprise waiting. Remember that power surge issue we never quite fixed? Sarah grinned. The one that makes the docking clamps release at random intervals. Perfect. Through the station's sensors, they watched as Valdorian troops attempted to establish new control points, only to be thwarted by systems that refused to behave according to any logical pattern. Air recyclers randomly reversed flow, gravity plating fluctuated, and emergency bulkheads closed and opened without warning. The Valdorians' perfect technology began to show signs of strain as it tried to impose order on systems that had evolved through years of human problem-solving. Their crystalline forms flickered with increasing frequency, their movements becoming less coordinated. Their technology requires perfect harmony, Sarah realized, studying the readings on her tablet. But our systems are like an immune system, millions of imperfect solutions working together, adapting to whatever threatens them. We're not just fighting back, we're infecting them with chaos. A new alarm blared through the station. On the main display, the Valdorian ships began to withdraw, their perfect formation breaking down as human unpredictability invaded their systems. The crystalline troops followed, retreating from a battle they hadn't expected to lose. But as Sarah watched them go, she knew this wasn't over. The Valdorians would be back, and next time they would be prepared. Humanity's advantage of surprise was gone. Yet somehow, she couldn't bring herself to be afraid. Because now they knew the truth. Sometimes the strongest systems weren't the perfect ones, but the ones that could adapt, change, and grow stronger from their very imperfections. She looked around at her fellow engineers, seeing the same determination in their eyes. They had work to do. It was time to make Ganymede Station even more beautifully imperfect. Turning the tide. In the weeks following the Valdorians' retreat, Ganymede Station transformed. The once orderly repair bays became laboratories of controlled chaos, where engineers from across the solar system gathered to share their own jury-rigged solutions and improvised fixes. Every patch, every workaround, every "that's not in the manual, but it works anyway" modification became a potential weapon. Sarah stood in the main control room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the defensive preparations. Station Manager Brooks, who had once dismissed her concerns about strange signals, now looked to her for guidance. "The Valdorians have been spotted near Saturn's rings," he reported, his face grim. "Their fleet is 3 times larger than before. Multiple stations have gone dark as they approach." Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display. The Valdorians had learned from their first defeat. Their ships now moved in complex, unpredictable patterns, attempting to mimic the chaos that had proved so effective against them. But there was a fundamental difference between true adaptation and merely copying it. "They're trying to be unpredictable, but they're doing it systematically," she observed. "Look at the patterns. They're still too perfect, just perfect in a more complicated way." The station's new defense coordinator, Colonel Martins, frowned at the display. "Can we use that against them?" "We already are," Sarah said, pulling up a different screen. "See these modifications we've been broadcasting? They look like random system upgrades, but they're actually bait. The Valdorians think they're learning to understand our chaos. Instead, they're absorbing exactly the kinds of imperfections we want them to. The strategy had been Maya Wong's idea, fighting a war not with weapons, but with engineering solutions so unconventional they bordered on art. Every station in the solar system had contributed their own unique fixes and workarounds, creating a database of human ingenuity that defied any attempt at logical analysis. A sudden alert drew their attention. The Valdorian fleet had arrived, their crystalline ships gleaming against the backdrop of Jupiter. But something was different this time. Their perfect formation was gone, replaced by what looked like genuine disorder. "They've adapted," Martin said, his voice tense. "Just like we feared." Sarah smiled. "No, they've trapped themselves." "Maya, initiate Protocol Murphy." Throughout the station, engineers sprang into action. Every jury-rigged system, every improvised solution they'd prepared began operating at cross-purposes, creating a cascade of controlled malfunctions. To an outside observer, it would have looked like Ganymede Station was tearing itself apart. The Valdorian fleet responded exactly as Sarah had predicted. Their ships moved to exploit what they perceived as weaknesses, their newly adopted chaos matching the patterns they'd observed during their first attack. But these weren't the same systems they'd encountered before. "They think they understand human engineering now," Sarah explained as the Valdorians fell into position. "They've studied our solutions, integrated them into their perfect systems. But they've missed the most important part. Human engineering isn't about knowing the right solution. It's about finding new solutions when the right one doesn't work." The trap was sprung. Every system the Valdorians had analyzed and adapted to suddenly shifted, operating in ways that should have been impossible. Power conduits ran backward, communication arrays broadcast on frequencies that shouldn't exist, and repair protocols rewrote themselves in real time. The effect on the Valdorian fleet was devastating. Their attempts to mimic human chaos backfired as their perfect systems tried to adapt to solutions that were themselves adapting. It was like trying to solve an equation where the variables kept changing. "Their ships," Martins breathed, watching the display. "They're fragmenting." The crystalline vessels began to break formation, their precise movements becoming erratic. Some ships seemed to phase in and out of normal space, while others developed fractal patterns across their hulls that spread like cracks in ice. "They tried to incorporate our chaos into their perfect systems," Sarah said. "But you can't control chaos. You can only learn to work with it." That's what they never understood. Human engineering isn't about achieving perfection. It's about embracing imperfection and making it work for you. Through the viewport, they watched as the mighty Valdorian fleet began to retreat once again. But this time, their withdrawal wasn't tactical. Their perfect civilization had been infected with something they couldn't control or understand: the human capacity for endless adaptation. As the last crystalline ship vanished into the depths of space, Sarah turned to her fellow engineers. "They'll be back," she said. "And next time, they'll try something new. But that's okay, because so will we." The engineers nodded, already brainstorming new solutions, new fixes, new ways to make the impossible work. Because that was what humans did best. They adapted, they improvised, and they turned their very imperfections into strengths. Ganymede Station had become more than just a repair facility. It was now a symbol of humanity's greatest advantage: the ability to look at a perfect solution and say, "Yeah, but what if we tried it this way instead?" Victory through innovation. 6 months after the second Valdorian retreat, Sarah Chen stood in Ganymede Station's newly established Adaptive Engineering Center, watching as engineers from across the solar system demonstrated their latest innovations. The center had become a hub of human creativity, where the line between repairs and revolution grew blurrier by the day. "They're coming back," Maya Wong announced, entering the room with a tablet displaying long-range sensor data. "But this time, it's different. Look at their ships." The holographic display showed the approaching Valdorian fleet, But these vessels were unlike anything they'd seen before. The crystalline structures were now interwoven with what appeared to be organic materials, creating hybrid ships that pulsed with both mathematical precision and biological unpredictability. They're evolving, Sarah realized. They're trying to bridge the gap between their perfect systems and our chaos. Not by copying us this time, but by actually changing what they are. Station Manager Brooks, who had joined them at the display, shook his head in amazement. We didn't just defeat them, we forced them to innovate. Maybe that was the real victory. But Sarah wasn't so sure. The new Valdorian ships moved with a fluidity that suggested they had finally begun to understand true adaptation. This wasn't just mimicry or tactical adjustment. It was genuine evolution. All stations, this is Commander Chen. Sarah broadcast across the solar system's defensive network. Implement Protocol Prometheus. Throughout human space, engineers activated the systems they'd been developing since the last encounter. But these weren't weapons in any traditional sense. They were something far more powerful. They were ideas, given form through human ingenuity. The Valdorian fleet entered the solar system, not as conquerors this time, but as something else. Their lead ship transmitted a message that resonated through every station's communication system. We come seeking understanding, the crystalline voice announced, but now it carried undertones of organic warmth. Your chaos has shown us a truth we have forgotten. Perfection is not an endpoint, it is a journey of constant change. Sarah stepped forward to respond. You tried to perfect our technology because you feared what we might become, but you never understood what makes human engineering special. It's not about finding the right solution. It's about finding new solutions always. The Valdorian ships moved closer, their hybrid forms refracting sunlight in ways that created impossible patterns. We propose an exchange, they offered, not of technology, but of perspective. Your species has mastered the art of controlled chaos. Ours has achieved harmonious precision. Together we could create something entirely new, Sarah finished. She looked around at her fellow engineers, seeing the excitement in their eyes. This was what they lived for, not just fixing problems, but finding new ways to solve them. Over the next few weeks, Ganymede Station became a laboratory of unprecedented collaboration. Valdorian crystalline technology merged with human improvisation, creating systems that were neither perfect nor chaotic, but something gloriously in between. Sarah worked alongside a Valdorian engineer, its crystalline form now featuring organic elements that allowed for more fluid movement and thought. They were designing a new type of propulsion system, one that combined Valdorian precision with human adaptability. Your species' greatest strength, the Valdorian observed, is not your ability to create chaos, but your ability to find patterns within it, to see possibilities where we saw only disorder. Sarah nodded, making an adjustment to their shared design. And your greatest strength wasn't your perfection. It was your ability to recognize when that perfection had become a limitation. The new propulsion system they created together became a symbol of what was possible when different approaches to problem-solving came together. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't chaotic. It was adaptive, able to change and grow in response to new challenges. As Sarah stood in the station's observatory months later, watching ships of both species working together to build something new, she reflected on how far they'd come. The Valdorians had arrived as would-be conquerors, afraid of humanity's chaotic potential. They'd left as partners in innovation, having learned that true advancement came not from achieving perfection, but from the endless journey of improvement. Ganymede Station had changed too. It was no longer just a repair facility or even a defensive stronghold. It had become a beacon of innovation, a place where the best of both species came together to explore new possibilities. Ready to try something impossible? Maya asked, approaching with a new set of engineering challenges. Sarah grinned. Impossible just means no one's figured out the wrong way to do it right yet. And in that spirit, humans and Valdorians continued to work together, proving that the greatest achievements come not from perfection or chaos alone, but from the courage to embrace both and the wisdom to know that there's always another way to solve a problem.